What I want to talk to you about and let you know is a little bit high level where the shared service center market came from, how it's developed, where it is now, and probably try to make a guess at some of the next steps that are going to be happening. And at the same time, try to explain how we see ourselves connected to the shared service center market, and probably also how the shared service market, I think, is connected to you. And it'll be your chance to ask questions afterwards and decide for yourself how it's connected. But I think it's a very important industry. It's an industry that's evolving very fast. And if in the accounting profession, you cannot underestimate what's happening in this market today. It's one of the fastest things that has happened since I've been watching this market. And you have to wonder what your role will be in accounting in 5 years' time, even in 3 years' time, let alone 10 or 20 years' time. And so I think it's worth paying attention, especially to the students, because you don't know kind of how the history was 10 years ago, but you're going to be hitting the ground running with a kind of shared service center revolution that's happening today. And I think it's worthwhile participating. So some say that 70% of corporations, big companies, are already either running their own service centers or thinking about running them or actively setting them up. Now that's an awful lot of companies globally. So that's why it's important, because I don't know how many of you here are students. Can you put your hands up if you are students from this college or any other college? Okay, and how many of you are working in shared service centers today? People who are here. Okay, so there's a few. How many of you are interested in shared service centers? Well, I just want to make you work now. Okay, come on. Well, you will be interested at the end of the presentation, hopefully, especially when Philip comes up and tells you a few jokes. But the development of the shared service industry, it's been a long 20 years, started with the US, moved to Western Europe, and then more recently, especially accelerating in the last 5 years, to Central and Eastern Europe. Depending which figures you look at from whose lists, and I've taken these from somebody else, there are apparently 3,000 shared service centers globally. Half of them are in Europe, 500 in Central and Eastern Europe. I know these figures can be, so probably these include non-financial shared services as well, but it gives you an idea of the scale. So Central and Eastern Europe is really a hotspot, and it's one of the points on this diagram. You can see that there are some big players on the market, and probably to understand who we are as Process Solutions, you should understand that the companies like Accenture, Genpact, HP, IBM, and Infosys, who are operating these huge towers of shared service center activity. So Accenture, I heard the other day, has 70,000 people in India. Maybe I'm lying now, but I have to check that. But that's something that's developed over the last 10 years? 15 maybe, but maybe no more. And they've developed these centers in strategic locations. You can see there Latin America, India, China. But there's also a big development in Central and Eastern Europe. Who are we? We're the opposite of this. We land ourselves on the ground. So we go to every country, and we have a network across Europe, but mainly focused in Central and Eastern Europe. So we do some of the work in this domain, but we do the work in the local countries, and we do not have these huge, great centers that the other companies have. So we're completely different to them. The reason I mention that again is because better to understand who we are and why our perspective might be influenced by the kind of company we are. Here are are some of the names of the companies who have set up shared services in Hungary. I think Attila already showed us some of them, but they're fantastic, huge international companies. These are companies that are bringing work and jobs not only to Hungary, but to the whole region, because if you add up all those shared service centers, they're all bringing work and jobs and activity to this region, and it's up to us and you in this region to recognize how you can be taking part in this process. So how does a shared service center start? So some companies who haven't yet started the idea of setting up a service will have to start with an idea, then a feasibility study, and then make some decisions. Whether you're going to make a shift and fix approach. Shift, then fix. So that's what usually people go ahead and do. Whether you have a captive near-shore location. Captive, that means you do it yourself within your own company. It's not something that you use an external provider to do. That's what captive means. Near-shore means it's a country nearby. It's not your own country, but it's a country which is close and it's not far away like India. So this is Central and Eastern Europe. In terms of the feasibility study, cost is still the starting point for most companies. Once you've decided to put a shared service center together, the hardest thing of all probably is managing the change. It's not easy. Plan, and plan, and plan, and plan. You have to break it down and work really hard on planning, as is to be, in huge amounts of detail. You have to track every single process in each country. Who was doing what, and how, which of those steps, which you've broken down into hundreds and hundreds of steps, are you going to take into the center? Who's going to take it? Exactly which day are they going to hand it over? You can imagine how many Excel spreadsheets and project managers you're going to need. Project management skills, something that companies don't normally have internally. Project management skills, do not underestimate how much skill you need to be able to manage such a huge project, massive. And how many clever people there are out there really working on these is incredible. Tracking and issue resolution. Of course, things go wrong. You have to really track it closely. Governance. You have to have some people who will make decisions if things go wrong. And communication. I think communication to everybody about the whole process of the change is vital, and that's something also not to underestimate. So, retained organization. People focus on the new shared service center, but what about the bit that's left behind? The retained organization, the people who are being dismantled, the people who are feeling like they've been punched in the gut, as opposed to the new people who are being hired in the service center, who have a new motivation. You have to put extra effort just to take care of what's being left. Connecting the people. Can't underestimate You have to bring the people together physically. The new people in the center have to meet with the old people who are going to be left in the business, not just the old accountants, but the business leaders, the sales people, the operations people, the people who are actually making a difference in the market, who are selling something for the company. You have to get to know them. They have to get to know you. That's the only way you're going to make an impact. So when they talk about processes, everyone talks about end to end. This means it's no longer enough just to start with booking the invoice and recording the payment. You have to go right to the beginning of the line where you actually start to involve the selection of the supplier and end up with the reconciliation of the balance sheet. That whole process should belong to one owner. Only then, if you own a process from end to end, can you really have an impact on improving it, fixing it, making it more efficient, because you take charge of the whole process. People talk about P2P. So this is, some call it purchase to pay, but you can call it procure to pay. And O to C, order to cash, R to R, record to report. There's 3 processes that cover the whole aspect of the way the service centers are looking at organizing themselves. Of course, when you take over and look at these processes and put people in charge of them, and you've managed the transition, there's a lot of cleaning and reconciling to do. It's amazing how much mess there can be. Big company, big mess. You take over not only the transactions, not only the P&L, but you take over the balance sheet. You have to make sure that you get that into shape, and that's a huge one-time project up front. Of course, you have to keep it in shape. That's another project in itself, but that's part of the ongoing operations. Alone do we mention other things that we want to do in the near future and ongoing. Standardize. Standardize across countries, across business lines. Every country wanted to do it their own way, and each business line had their own special needs. You have to be able to look across that and try to find a standardized way, because that's what's going to drive out many of the unnecessary steps. Put in your controls and then optimize. Eliminate, simplify, automate. I can't remember how many times I've said those 3 words just together like that, but you know, it's kind of obvious, isn't it? Eliminate what you don't need, simplify the rest, and then once you've cracked it, automate it. Because that's what humans do. They try and do something better today than they did yesterday. And that's what people are doing. Busy, busy, busy people are doing this in these centers. So, optimizing the effectiveness and the efficiency is always a trade-off between quality, timeliness, and cost. Another good thing to know is it's always easier to manage something centrally than it is if you left it remote. So even if there's a borderline between whether it's worthwhile centralizing something or not, if you want it changed and fixed and improved, centralize it, because it will be much quicker and much better fixed than if you try running around all the different countries trying to fix something. Integrating smaller countries, question. Some service centers we see try to treat the integration of small countries in the same way as big countries. I don't think it works like that. Some companies, some service centers have brought in small countries and small entities to the service center, others not yet, and I think the debate will go on as to how that should be solved. But it is different. So the next stage of the revolution, what's happening already in fact, consolidation of centers. Companies have a number of centers, but they want to maybe reduce them. Not make them into one, find an optimal level, something in Asia where it's English speaking, volume driven, something a little bit higher level processes, maybe in a closer country where the culture is more connected to the main driving force of the business in Europe, maybe in Central and Eastern Europe. And maybe 1 or 2 extra locations just not to be exposed to have too few centers so that you're relying on one particular city or one particular pool of talent. Consolidation of centers. Moves to hybrid solutions. So this is captive versus outsourced. I mentioned captive. This is like in-house, outsourced. People are combining these now. If you watch carefully on the slide, we've got some magic. The low value transaction stuff is being shifted out, for example, from Central and Eastern Europe to Asia, India. More complex finance activities are being added at the top end. So we're talking about not just the transaction processes, but things like budgeting and controlling of the budget, parts of even the statutory accounting and tax processes, as well as many kind of business analytics that are needed to drive the whole business forward locally. I mean growth, sales growth. So business analytics to support the local business. So as you see, the shared service centres are moving up the value chain. Call them now centres of excellence. And they're adding non-finance functions to them as well. IT, HR, supply chain, many more. In fact, as you can see, these centres are becoming not shared service centres anymore, but global business service centres, the engine of the whole organization for the world. Imagine that. This is going to house all the data, all the information that is being collected across all the markets. The only thing left is for people to recognize that power and to decide what to do with it and how they can gain a competitive edge to drive information at the right time, to the right place, to their colleagues who are busy trying to sell something in the local markets. So those who have the power of the information and the data centrally need to connect to their colleagues in the marketplace so they can understand what it is they need and how they're going to deliver that to them. Why is it interesting for Process Solutions? Why am I talking about it? Because for our company, the number of clients we help, has increased over the last 5 years by four times the number of clients who are involved in shared service centres. This part of our business is growing 8 times faster than any other part. And 25% of our revenues are now coming from helping shared service centres in one way or another. So, next part of the presentation, I'm just going to try and give you a little bit of information about why we could be interesting to the shared service centres. What is it that we do that is interesting for the centres? To do that, I'm going to just show you our company very quickly in a little bit more detail. So officially, we're an accounting service provider. We do bookkeeping and payroll. Actually, we're a people development organization. So again, it looks like our products are hands-on, frontline services. We connect with our clients. We call our clients business partners because we work together with them. Different arrangements, not just them and us. But our basic services, bookkeeping, statutory accounting, management reporting in IFRS and whatever GAAP, payroll, loan staff. These are all services, by the way, that we provide also to shared services. So we're 200 people in Hungary. Across the region, we have 5 countries where we have offices: Poland, Czech, Slovak, Hungary, Romania. And we have 300 people altogether. We have 25 more points on the map where we have network partners. Whenever one of our clients needs help in another country, we find a partner who is similar to ourselves, and we enable that partner to help our client. So we're about 2,000 people across Europe. That's our capability, let's say. There's a hot spot here. Poland, Czech, Hungary, Slovak, Romania. It just so happens to be where our offices are, and it just so happens to be where 95% of the shared service centers in Central and Eastern Europe have located, just by coincidence. Another reason why we're heavily involved with the shared services, because we happen to be in the right place at the right time. We serve external clients. Shared services serve internal clients. But the delivery principle is the same. Here's a delivery machine. You've all seen these bubbles. People, technology, process. Doing something together to deliver something to clients. People is the thing that brings the technology to life through the creation of process. That's what it's all about. Just interesting topic just for some accountants here. Are there any accountants? We're going to talk a bit about balance sheet here. CapEx just came to me when I looked at this slide. In the management and control environment around the outside of these three bubbles, we put a work environment in place for our people to be able to deliver these services. What do we buy? Tables and chairs. What do we do with them? We put them on the balance sheet. Low value. Then we buy some software and hardware. What do? We put it on the balance sheet. Okay, medium value. Massive investment in people. What do? Put it on the balance sheet? No. High value. What do the people produce when they connect with that technology while sitting on those chairs? Process. That's the intangible value, the DNA of every business is the process that they've produced. On the balance sheet or not? Just a side note, the ultimate goal of the delivery machine is to be process dependent, not people dependent. Of course, the machine needs people, but it always tries to find a way not to need people. If all the people left immediately, the process machine would be in trouble. But you have to be able to build a process machine that can cope with one or two people or a small fraction of the people drifting off, because people will. Continuous improvement. Right from the start. Innovate. Revise, train, use, innovate. Continuously changing the process. So first of all, never be happy with what you're doing. You should never be able to answer that the reason why you're doing something is because somebody told you. The reason why you're doing something is because, first of all, you understand the objective of the company you work for. You understand how what you're doing fits to that objective. And at the same time, you understand the role you play within the team, so the people before you and after you who will be involved in that process, what they're going to give you and what the next person's needs are. Otherwise, if you don't understand that, you can't play in the game. Dare to ask. Our first lesson at good old Arthur Andersen was, as a junior accountant, was if you don't know what you're doing while you're on the audit, ask your senior. So we all went running around asking the seniors about, what's the objective here? Oh, okay, thank you. You have to dare to ask and you have to dare to question, and that's the role of the modern accountant, not just to count the beans. So our biggest investment is in people. Our organization looks like a pyramid. Older people at the top, younger people at the bottom. Kind of like general managers, CFOs, chief accountants and accounting assistants. That's how we really look. So the older accountants have to start behaving like business leaders. We have a back office, and we train people right from the very start as a graduate, even before they join us, even whilst they're still studying, into business leaders. We are a people machine. Partly training, partly on-the-job work experience. Training leads to knowledge, leads to high product, leads to successful partnership with client. That's our base business strategy. So we start with technical knowledge. People have to learn the technical stuff at the beginning. Doesn't stop, but then you have to start to learn how to work, manage your time, organize your files, put things into a neat place in the office, behave like a proper team member before you can start to think about managing other people, of course. Once you've managed yourself, mastered yourself, you can master other people. Other people internally before you start going into mastering the client, how to behave with the client. It's slightly different. And then how to manage the business. And this is a progression through the career of an accountant, either at our place or at the shared service center. It's a 10, 12, 14-year training program for the people that recognize it, want it, and will grasp it. Some of our clients are becoming shared service centers. So we've served regional clients. We've served big multinational, international clients. That's 99% of our clients are the big clients. And they've evolved over the last 10 years and become shared service centers. So that's why we're with so many. So I've shown you the similarity between our company, Process Solutions, and the shared service centers. We shared the journey together. We do the same product, accounting. Okay, us to external clients, shared services to internal. We share the same hotspot in Central and Eastern Europe with our 5 countries. We have the same delivery principle, partnership with our clients, internal or external, and the same machine, and the same focus on developing people. So some of the concrete things that we do for the shared services, just to go through very quickly: process mapping and migration support. We help some of the shared services transport people from other countries over, transport processes from other countries over to their shared service centers. And this means sometimes that the people have to carry the processes across. Not physically in the suitcase, but in their minds. So we take over the jobs locally, and we bring the people across with the knowledge, and then we implant, and our people go away. Startup support, we can do the accounting for some of the shared service centers. They have their own accounting to do. That's not the first and most important principle that. So when a shared service center arrives to a new country with big objectives of building services for many countries, the first thing in their mind may not be that they need to set up their own accounting function internally. We lend our people, either locally or from different countries, cross-border, to the shared services. They don't have enough good people all the time. We help them with their statutory compliance. Sometimes we support them with help desk across border. Cleanup, balance sheet reconciliation, training. Sometimes we operate mini centers for them. I call them here virtual or mini. It's small number of countries on a separate platform that doesn't make sense to bring into the center. So the key connection between us and the service centers is the people, if you haven't guessed. We develop people. Shared services need people. and we share our people. So if you put all that together, we develop our people to support shared services. Specific purpose, specific skills, as and when needed. Shared services are growing fast. They can't support everything they need. Continued evolution. Mentioned earlier, the global data, information, knowledge being centralized. Maybe that's something I hear people talking about. How are we going to manage it? Who owns it? How are we going to keep it secure? But it's fantastic to know that the knowledge is all there, isn't it? These are good questions to ask. But then, the realization of the power of that data, what to do with it. What to do with it? Create value for the business. In fact, don't just create it, don't be reactive. Start to think how you can use that information and data to think on behalf of the people who are there trying to sell the services and deliver the services locally. I mean, deliver the products. You know, in Philip's case, deliver oil or telecom or whatever the product might be. So there's two aspects of value. One is, in terms of accounting, you could say to improve the KPIs, to be able to have less credit notes or faster collection. But the other big one is to drive the growth of the business globally. And ultimately to enable the business to realize a competitive edge in the marketplace. So that is how big the challenge is for the modern accountant. Debate continues. Finance versus multi-functions, captive outsourced, near or offshore, cost and value. The people are talking about it and will talk about it. There's no final answer on any of them. Remember, 70% of all corporations are heading that way. There is no turning back. It's a done deal. Everybody knows it works. Everybody knows that it's the way to go forward, and it's almost clear to those who've seen it closely that it makes sense. There's some fine-tuning, but it's heading in that direction. It's going to impact all of us, all of you, sooner or later, if you go into this industry, if you carry on working in this industry, wherever you are in the world. Don't swim against the river. Find out what your role is going to be swimming with the water, because you're going to get tired if you swim against it. It's not worth it. The finance function is at the heart of the global business center. It's not a finance center, it's a global business center, the engine of the drive of the business. You can do whatever you want to be part of that, but first you have to recognize the fact that you can be part of that and try and make a change and drive the business forward globally from that center. It's no longer enough just to be an accountant, no longer enough just to be technically polishing yourself, no longer enough just to speak English or even German or one other language, Hungarian even, but these days it's also, you need to think about how you're going to communicate with people. You need strong interpersonal skills to connect together with the end points at the business in each country. It's not just a question of talking to them and exchanging emails. It's a question of getting to know them, feeling the pulse, and connecting with them so that you can actually make a real difference. Build relationships with people in other countries, across new media. So it's a development opportunity for everybody. And it's a business opportunity for us. Thank you.